So we're continuing Mark today, and the Gospel of Mark. It says the Gospel according to Mark, but it's actually Peter's Gospel. It's Peter's eyewitness account, and you're going to see stuff here that it's Peter's story. It's not Peter telling the story of Jesus. It's Peter telling the story of how he saw. You can imagine Peter sitting in the witness stand and saying, "I'm testifying to what I know and what I saw. And if I don't know it and I didn't see it, it's not being testified to, even though it might be true." Many of the stories that are in Matthew or Luke or John might not be in here because Mark is telling the story with Peter. So we do begin, of course, with connecting to the Old Testament, and he would have been aware of John the Baptist through John, the Apostle John, who was connected to John the Baptist. So, okay, he knew about the Baptist. Everybody knew about the Baptist. So he has that in there. And of course, being told the story of Jesus' baptism. But he goes over this stuff pretty fast. Stuff that maybe he wasn't there for. He wasn't there for that, of course. But we go down here to where Peter comes into with chapter 14. So we have Peter coming in chapter 15, I should say, and then the rest of it goes. So 1 through 14 is kind of a setup of the structure. Then we go with what Peter saw and what he did, and John, even though it's being told by Mark. So we have the story here. We're getting the story of Jesus through Peter's eyes. And so you have Peter coming in to the game at 1:15, and then we go on, and he's telling about what they did and how they ministered, and how he even talks about how Jesus ministers to Peter's mother-in-law. So we have those connections here. And this is told by Mark, so it isn't in first person by Peter, but nonetheless, it's still Peter's gospel. And again, all the things that he said and how he went forth. And many of those people were good scribes. It seems like Mark might have been a very good scribe to write down the things that are said. And they had very good memories back then, better than we do. They would have to remember things. They would memorize their own genealogies. They would memorize things. So with carrying things in your head, they didn't have signs on the road, so you'd have to know how to get around, and then values for economics and different things. So you have this where he talks about them going from town to town. Chapter 2, they go into Capernaum, and there they had the man that was laid down through the hole in the roof. I mean, Peter would have been witness to that. It's an amazing thing to watch people tear a roof apart so they could get someone healed of palsy. Once again, when I mentioned palsy, this is something where the muscles have atrophied. I mean, if I said you're healed and then they carried him out, it's unverifiable. Okay, maybe he's already healed, but if he can get up and carry his bed from atrophied arms and legs, that would be a great miracle. And he goes and calls Matthew. He was with him for that. And he goes through, and they're talking about fastings and different things. And he also, when Jesus gets called on the carpet by the Pharisees and Sadducees, there's Peter writing this down. In chapter 3, he talks about entering the synagogue and all of the stuff about what to do about Sabbath and that he's the Lord of the Sabbath. And we roll on down. He does mention all of them by name, again, in a reiteration in the middle of 3. Again, Jesus is taken on by the Pharisees and Sadducees in chapter 3 about, you're of Satan. He goes, well, how? This doesn't make sense. How can I be of Satan? If Satan cast out Satan, how can his kingdom stand? You're not making an argument. And I love the last one. Who is my brother and who is my mother? Anyone who does the will of God is my brother, my mother, and my sister. And he began to teach by the seaside, and their multitudes came about. And he taught many things by parables. And parables were there not to be mysterious, but actually, when you say things are like common things, people can identify. It's education through identification. When you talk about the lost coin, most of them knew what it was like to lose a coin or lose something. Like, oh, I can identify with this. Parables are identification, education by identification, but you're speaking within the realm of the common people. If I were with the intelligentsia or something, I might talk in different ways, education through intelligentsia. And you can do that. That is a method of education, education through intelligentsia. He could have talked higher level theologies, and he could have talked higher level connections and all these things, but he taught to do education through identification, which is the clearest form of speech. And some of these people did not want to be taught by that. The Pharisees and Sadducees and these, seems like they chose not to be taught by parables. I'm not going to listen to him. Unless he talks to me in my speak, I'm not going to listen to him. And he goes, I'm not speaking to you in your speak. You will meet me at my speak. So that's why he chose parables. And many of them did, like Nicodemus and Joseph of Arimathea and many of the others. Many priests came to Jesus after the church was established in Acts chapter 2. Many of them did. But it wasn't through the intelligentsia. It was through, again, identification, education through identification. Here he talks about the sower that sows the word, and some fell on stony ground. We went over a lot of this in Matthew. So if you've been watching Matthew, I'm not going to go and explain the whole thing again. And the good thing, again, either the Pharisees or the disciples will run to your rescue. What does this mean? So you're not left in the dark. So you don't know what the sower is, you don't know what the seed is, you don't know what the ground represents, but he'll tell that. And this story is fairly well known in the church, that someone's sowing, and some of it goes on stony ground, some of it doesn't get any root, some of it falls among thorns, and some of it falls in good ground, and yields increase of 30, 60, and 100 folds. He who has ears to hear, let him hear. Now, he that has ears to hear, let him hear, is also one of those you need to do place. This is something you need to do. This, if I say, I need you to go mow the yard this afternoon, make sure that you also clean up the trash. He who has ears to hear, let him hear. That means this is what I want you to do. He wants us to take care of our hearts here. And when he was alone, he told the 12 the parables. And he talked about how that the sower is the Son of Man, and the sower sows the word, and it goes out and it's heard, but Satan comes and takes it away. If it doesn't fall into your heart, it gets taken away, or it falls in thorny grounds, which is the cares of the world, and it doesn't have any roots, and it's gone, especially after persecution. But there is the good soil where it goes in and makes 30, 60, and 100 fold. Talks about the candle that you don't put under a bushel. Nothing's hid that won't be manifest. Take heed for whatever you measure, for it is measured to you. So be careful. It doesn't say you can't judge. It's just be careful how you judge, because it's going to be measured back to you. He that has will be given more than he that has not will be taken away. We always think that if we have not, we're waiting to be given too, but each of us have been given something. Take that something and let it grow. Get it deep and let it grow. The kingdom of God is a man who cast seed in the ground, and it went up, and the seed sprung, and he... the kingdom of God is a man that cast seed in the ground, and he should sleep in night and day, and the seed went up and grew, and he knew not how. The earth brought forth itself, first the blade, and then the ear, and then the full corn. And the fruit came forth immediately, and he puts it to the sickle, because the harvest has come. All he did was put down the seed. It was the earth that does the work. Jesus puts the seed out. It's our heart that does the work. That's our faith part. Our faith is to have a good heart, so that seed can start to grow. He goes, the word of God is like a mustard seed, which is a very small seed, but it becomes this gigantic herb that's so big that even birds can hide under its branches. And he told many parables. I mean, there are probably parables that we didn't hear. He'd look at maybe at the sea, or talk about a pelican, or talk about, talk about a snail or something, talk about the sand. I can't say for sure that he used those, but if you're going to use parables, you're not going to, I'm sure there are times when he repeated the same thing because he had different audiences. But there's similar ideologues there, similar ways of taking nature or human nature and revealing God and revealing the kingdom through the things of nature. And he said he went over, and there we have the story of he's going to pass over on the other side. They put him in the boat and he goes to sleep. And we heard this story before where the waves come and twirl everybody around, and they become afraid and they wake him up. Oh, Master, aren't you aware that we're going to die? And he goes up and he says, peace be still, and stops the waves. And he says, why are you so fearful? How is it that you have no faith? Why are you so fearful? Seems like there's either fearfulness or faithfulness. Well, why are you being so fearful? They could have had faith and said, hey, we got the Son of God in their boat, we'll be fine. And this is, again, connecting these dots, seeing the overall. in chapter 5, they go into the Gadarenes, and there they met the man. And I know in Matthew it says too, this isn't a big deal. We're dealing with people who are in a courtroom, for example, telling a story. I love The Case for Christ by a man named Lee Strobel. He says that when they're doing prosecuting cases or trying to find out truth, they don't hang up on the little bitty details. When you said the man had a blue hat, the other guy said the man had a black hat, so we're going to throw out the entire testimony. No, blue or black doesn't matter. You know, it's the fact of what we're trying to prosecute here. Yes, it may be only Peter saw the one man. Maybe Matthew saw two and one ran away or something like that. I'm not going to speculate on what the different witnesses are saying. Jesus took the person or persons and healed them. And then the whole thing happened with the swine. So here in the rendition by Mark, a man comes out of the tombs and he has an unclean spirit. He'd been dwelling in the tombs and he'd been there. He was fettered by chains and no one could tame him. And Jesus, he saw Jesus afar off, and a man who worshipped him and said, "You are Jesus. What do you have to do with thee? What have I to do with thee, thou Son of the Most High? Don't torment me." And he told the unclean spirit to come out of the man. He asked what his name was, and the unclean man said, the demons in there said they were legion. So he asked them to come out, and they went into the swine. This is where the swine go and run off the cliff. And the people see this, and they're upset with Jesus. They didn't say, "Oh, this is cool. Look, God is here. Let's learn from him." Instead, they got mad and asked him to leave. And they went out the city to see what was done, and they'd come to Jesus and see that he that was possessed with the devil and was sitting and clothed and was in his right mind. And it was told them what had happened to him that was possessed by the devil, and also concerning the swine. They prayed him to depart. And when he had gone to the ship, the one that possessed wanted to go with me and go with him. But Jesus suffered him not and said, "Go home to your friends and tell them the great things that the Lord has done for you and has compassion on you." So here's Jesus sending him back. And he departed, and they went over to Decapolis, and Jesus did many marvels there. This is where he meets a man named Jairus, and we get the very interesting story. There's a lot of coincidences that happen in the Bible that are wonderful things. This is the story of Jairus, who has a 12-year-old daughter who's dying, and asks Jesus to come and heal her, and Jesus says he will. But along the way, there's this woman that has, ironically enough, a 12-year-old blood disease. She's gone to all the doctors, no one can help him. She can't even get an audience with Jesus, but she thinks, if I can just reach through the crowd somehow and touch the hem of his garment, that little bitty thread of a hem of his garment, you wouldn't even know it among the dozens of people and hundreds of people around Jesus. So she fights her way through, and she just touches the hem. You don't think that she grabs it and holds and pulls. She just touches it and maybe lets go. But Jesus knew immediately that faith, that virtue had gone out of him. This is what I was saying. When Jesus does that healing, a little bit of him leaves. A little bit of him leaves, and he needs to go recharge. Here's where that idea comes up. Because all these people around him, and he goes, "Who touched my clothes?" And the disciples were like, "There's a multitude around here. Why are you saying, 'Who touched me?'" And he looked around, and the woman was fearful. She thought she was in trouble. "Daughter, the truth, thy faith has made thee whole. Go in peace and be whole of your plague." Jesus knew exactly what was happening. So she gets up and leaves, and they went off to meet to Jairus' house. And on the way, they find out, "Don't bother the master, the girl has died." Jesus says an amazing thing here. He goes, "Be not afraid, only believe." So he suffered no man to follow him except Peter, James, and John, the brother of James. So you have these three. And again, here's Peter in the mix. Again, this is Peter's witness. Peter goes with them. And they went to the house, and they saw there was a great tumult around it. People were crying and weeping. And he goes, "What is all this about weeping? She's not dead. She just sleeps." And they laugh him to scorn. They're laughing at him to scorn. And he takes the father and mother and the damsel and with him, and he enters into where she was lying. And then he says, "Damsel, I say to you, arise." And the word damsel here, this is 12-year-olds and down. You get the idea that child and damsel is about 12-year-old down. And above that is woman and man. That's kind of, if you want to lean on the tradition of bar mitzvah, if you want to see, this kind of thing. So, you know, you get the idea. Again, the word damsel gets kind of, it gets defined here. So, they laughed him to scorn, but he says, damsel, arise. And straightway the damsel arose, and she walked, for she was of 12 years of age, and they were astonished. And he straightly told them that no man should know it, and commanded them that they were given something to eat. Now, he's kind of hiding this miracle from the crowd because the crowd had scorned him. They didn't have the faith to believe, so you get to keep this faith for yourself. They're going to say, oh, okay, she was just sleeping. You know, Jesus kind of hid this miracle, if you will. You know, she's not dead. She's just sleeping. They're going to come out, and then when she comes out, they go, oh, you were right, Jesus. She was sleeping. He hides this miracle from the faithless that are around them. You know, and like I said, through many of this, you'll see Jesus doing different things to light different people's faith. You know, if it says you do this, he'll do this in private. That'll help your faith. Does this in public to help your faith. Tells him to go share with his family, like he does with the man from the Gadarenes. But he tells another man, don't tell anybody that you were healed of your blindness. Just go see Moses and go sell the temple, witness to them. Whatever activates faith is what Jesus is doing here. And so that's an interesting thing that he's doing. So we keep moving through the Gospel of Mark. I'm not in the foot race. I think it's just wonderful to see how all of this fits together. It fits together wonderfully. Thank you.